Evan Rourke had always preferred the quiet parts of life. While most people filled their days with busy routines, Evan enjoyed slow mornings, calm evenings, and the peaceful rhythm of nature. He volunteered at the small wildlife rescue center outside his town, and he loved every moment of it. His friends often joked that he understood animals better than humans, and Evan never denied it. Animals, he believed, were honest. They never hid what they felt. They never tried to impress. They just lived, and he admired that. The night everything changed started like any other, except for a soft glow in the sky. Evan was walking home from the rescue center when he saw bright streaks of light falling gently toward the forest beyond the hill. At first, he thought it was a meteor shower, something beautiful but normal. But the lights did not behave like normal meteors. Instead of disappearing quickly, they seemed to drift downward, almost as if they were choosing a place to land. Evan felt a quiet curiosity rise inside him. He wasn't the type to chase strange lights, but something about this felt different. It wasn't frightening. It felt like a soft pull, like a whisper calling him to take a closer look. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to follow the lights. The forest was familiar to him, and he often walked its trails even at night. He knew the paths well, and the moonlight made everything bright enough to see without fear. As he stepped into the trees, the air felt cooler and unusually still, as if the entire forest was waiting. He walked for several minutes, noticing nothing unusual except a faint shimmer between the branches. The deeper he went, the stronger the shimmer became, almost like a glow on the ground ahead. He slowed his steps, listening carefully. The forest was silent, no rustling leaves, no insects, no birds. It was an odd kind of silence, calm but expectant. When he reached a small clearing, he finally saw what had caused the glow. Lying in the grass was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. At first glance, it looked like a wolf or a large dog, but its fur seemed to give off a soft silver light, almost as if it had captured a piece of the stars. Its eyes were closed, and its chest rose and fell in slow, shallow breaths. Evan felt his heart tug with concern. The creature wasn't dangerous, nothing about it felt threatening. It simply looked tired, as if it had traveled a long distance and could barely hold on. He stepped closer, moving slowly and respectfully. He whispered soothing words the same way he did when calming frightened animals at the rescue center. The creature's eyes opened. They glowed a gentle blue, bright and deep at the same time. Evan froze for a moment, not from fear but from awe. The eyes were intelligent, far more than any animal he had seen. There was awareness in them, and something else. Something that felt strangely familiar, like a quiet greeting inside his mind. "Hey," he said softly, keeping his voice gentle. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." The creature didn't move away. Instead, it watched him with those glowing eyes, calm and curious. Evan slowly knelt beside it. Its fur shimmered faintly as he placed his hand near its paw, giving it the chance to move away if it wished. It didn't. Instead, it let out a soft sound, not a growl, not a whine, but a smooth, humming noise, like a cat purring mixed with a musical tone. Evan felt warmth in his chest. Something about this creature touched him in a way he couldn't explain. It was beautiful, gentle, and clearly in need of help. He didn't know what it was or where it came from, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't leave it here. He decided to bring it back to the rescue center. It would be safer there, and he could take better care of it. The creature looked light at first, but when he gently lifted it, he realized it weighed more than expected. Not heavy enough to trouble him, but solid, like holding something with an unusual density. Still, the creature remained calm in his arms. Its body gave off a soft warmth that felt soothing. The walk back felt longer than before, mostly because Evan kept glancing down at the creature, hoping it was all right. It kept its eyes half open, watching him with trust that made him feel responsible in a way he hadn't felt before. He wanted to protect it, even though he didn't completely understand it. When he reached the rescue center, he quietly unlocked the side door. The building was small but cozy, filled with supplies and equipment for animals of all kinds. He brought the creature to one of the resting rooms, a warm space with soft blankets, clean water, and gentle lighting. He carefully placed the creature on a thick blanket and watched as it curled up slightly, relaxing as if relieved to finally rest. "What are you?" Evan whispered, not expecting an answer. "Where did you come from?" The creature blinked slowly, and Evan felt a faint tingling sensation near his temples, like a soft echo inside his thoughts. It wasn't a voice, exactly, but it felt like a gentle feeling of gratitude. He wasn't sure if he imagined it, but the warmth in his chest grew stronger. He checked the creature for any obvious wounds. There were no cuts, no bruises, nothing that suggested harm, but its energy seemed low, like it needed rest more than anything else. He set out a bowl of water nearby, just in case, and sat beside it for a while, simply watching over it. The night grew deeper, and the rescue center was silent. Evan usually left after evening checks, but tonight he stayed. He felt as if leaving the creature alone would somehow be wrong, even though he knew it wasn't dangerous. It simply felt important. He couldn't explain why, but he trusted the feeling. Every few minutes, the creature made that soft humming sound, almost musical. Sometimes its fur glowed faintly, like moonlight shifting over water. Evan found the quiet glow comforting. It made the room feel peaceful in a way he had never experienced. Hours passed, and Evan felt his eyes growing heavy. He didn't want to sleep, but the calm atmosphere surrounded him until his body relaxed naturally. He leaned back against the wall, still watching the creature. Just before his eyes closed, he saw it gently lift its head and look at him with soft blue eyes. For a moment, he felt the same warm echo in his thoughts, a quiet message that felt like safe. He smiled without meaning to, then drifted into a light, peaceful sleep. When morning arrived, sunlight slowly filled the room. Evan woke with a start, instantly remembering the creature. He looked toward the blanket and saw it lying there peacefully, its fur shimmering softly in the daylight. It looked stronger, more awake, and its eyes opened fully when it noticed him. "Good morning," Evan said softly, feeling silly for greeting an unknown creature, but also feeling strangely connected to it. The creature stood up slowly, stretching like a tired dog waking from a long nap, but its movements were smoother, almost graceful. It walked toward Evan, stopped in front of him, and gently pressed its head against his shoulder. Evan laughed softly, surprised. The gesture felt affectionate, grateful, and warm. "I guess you trust me now," he said. The creature made a soft tone in response, almost like a friendly greeting. He decided he needed to name it, at least until he learned more about it. The creature's glow reminded him of the night sky, soft and beautiful. "Lyra," he said quietly. It felt right, like the name belonged to her. The creature blinked slowly, as if accepting. From that moment on, Evan had no idea how strange, extraordinary, and life-changing his world was about to become. All he knew was that he had found something special, something he was meant to protect. He didn't know where Lyra came from or how she ended up in his forest, but he felt certain of one thing: their meeting was not an accident. Evan woke the next morning with a strange feeling of excitement, the kind he had not felt since he was a child, discovering something new for the first time. As he walked toward the small room where Lyra rested, he found himself hoping she would still be there. Some part of him feared it had all been a dream, the strange glow, the soft humming sounds, the silver-furred creature with bright blue eyes. But when he pushed the door open, the gentle light from her fur greeted him like a quiet sunrise. Lyra was awake, sitting comfortably on the blanket. Her eyes followed him with a calm curiosity, and when he stepped closer, she made a soft humming sound that felt almost like a warm hello. Evan smiled. He still didn't fully understand her, but every moment spent near her felt peaceful, like being wrapped in calm air. "Morning, Lyra," he whispered. She tilted her head and blinked slowly, as if she understood. Evan carried a bowl of fresh water and set it in front of her. Lyra touched it gently with her nose, and the water rippled with a tiny burst of light, almost like a tiny spark dancing on the surface. Evan froze, surprised, but Lyra acted as if nothing unusual had happened. She drank from the bowl, then looked up at him again with those bright, intelligent eyes. He crouched beside her, keeping his movements soft and slow. Even though she trusted him, he never wanted to make her feel uncomfortable. She leaned slightly closer, brushing her head against his hand. The simple touch filled him with a gentle warmth, like sunlight spreading through his chest. He didn't know how she did that, but he didn't question it. He just accepted it. Throughout the morning, Evan stayed with her. He observed her closely, not the way a scientist would, but the way a friend would. He watched how she moved, how she reacted to sounds, how her glowing fur brightened when she was curious and dimmed when she relaxed. At one point he dropped a pencil by accident, and before he could pick it up, it slid gently across the floor toward him as if someone had nudged it without using their hands. Evan slowly lifted his eyes to Lyra. She was watching him with a soft, almost playful expression, like she had done something small just to see his reaction. "Did you do that?" Evan asked quietly. Lyra blinked once, then twice, and then the pencil gave a tiny wiggle by itself, confirming his guess. Evan let out a soft breath, amazed but not frightened. Somehow Lyra's presence made even the strangest things feel gentle and harmless. It felt more like discovering a new talent than witnessing something impossible. That as the day went on, Evan kept learning little things about her. When she was happy, her fur shimmered like starlight. When she was curious, it brightened. When she was sleepy, it softened into a calm glow, like moonlight through a cloud. Sometimes she made musical hums, each one a different note that seemed to match her feelings. Evan had never met any creature, animal or human, who communicated so clearly without using words. He also discovered that she could sense emotions. When Evan felt unsure or confused, Lyra gently pressed her forehead against his arm, filling him with a soothing calm that cleared his worries like wind clearing fog. It wasn't exactly telepathy, not like hearing actual thoughts, but it was something close, like the gentle touch of understanding. Around noon, Evan decided to check on the other animals in the rescue center. He worried about leaving Lyra alone, but she seemed strong enough now to rest without needing him by her side every second. As soon as he stood up to leave, Lyra rose too, as if she thought she was supposed to follow him. Evan stepped closer and placed a gentle hand against her shoulder. "Stay here for a bit," he said kindly. "I'll come back soon." Lyra watched him closely. Her eyes softened, and she settled back onto the blanket, but she continued watching him until he left the room. Evan closed the door carefully behind him as he went about feeding the other animals, cleaning their spaces, and refilling supplies. he found himself thinking constantly about Lyra. She wasn't just unusual, she was extraordinary. Part of him wanted to tell anyone about her, but another part, a stronger part, felt protective. He didn't want anyone to misunderstand her, be afraid of her, or try to take her away. She trusted him, and he felt responsible for her safety. When he returned to the room, an hour later, Lyra greeted him by gently brushing her head against his knee. He laughed softly. "You act like you missed me," he murmured. She made a soft, warm tone that sounded almost like agreement. Over the next few days, Lyra grew stronger. Her glow became brighter, her movements more graceful, and her hums more expressive. Evan spent as much time with her as he could. When he had to leave the center, he always hurried back, excited to see her again. Each time he entered the room, Lyra welcomed him with that same warm presence that made him feel calmer than he'd ever felt with anyone. One afternoon, as Evan sat beside her on the floor, he decided to test something. He picked up a small rubber ball from a nearby shelf and rolled it gently across the room. Lyra watched it for a moment, then her eyes brightened slightly. The ball stopped, changed direction, and rolled back to him as if guided by an invisible hand. Evan laughed. "You're incredible." Lyra made a light, melodic hum that sounded pleased. But not everything she did involved unusual abilities. Sometimes she simply lay beside him, resting her head on his leg while he read. Other times, she observed him quietly as he worked, her expression calm and thoughtful. She learned quickly when he brought food for other animals. She watched with interest, and when he turned on a faucet, she studied the water like it was a new discovery. Evan noticed something important. Lyra behaved more like a person learning about a new world than like an animal learning tricks. She wasn't just following instincts, she was trying to understand things. He could see it in her eyes, the curiosity, the careful attention, the quiet intelligence. One evening, after finishing his work, Evan returned to Lyra's room with a gentle smile. She stood when he entered, her fur glowing softly in the dim light. Evan sat down beside her, and she immediately settled next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. "I wish I knew more about you," he whispered. "Where you came from, what you need, what you're thinking." For a moment, Lyra didn't move. Then he felt something, a soft, warm echo inside his thoughts. It wasn't a word, but it carried a feeling of kindness, gratitude, and something else he didn't recognize, something like familiarity, as if she had known him much longer than he had known her. Evan's breath caught softly. He didn't want to assume too much, but he understood that Lyra was trying to communicate in her own way. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "I promise." Lyra lifted her head and touched her nose gently to his forehead. It felt like a soft spark of comfort spreading through him. As the days became a full week, their bond grew stronger. Lyra followed Evan around the center whenever he allowed it, her steps light and graceful. The other animals reacted calmly to her, as if sensing something gentle in her energy. Even the most nervous creatures relaxed near her. Evan loved watching her explore. She discovered sunlight, shadows, and reflections. She learned how mirrors worked and spent almost an hour tilting her head at her own glowing image. She figured out how to open latch doors with her paw, but she only did it when she truly needed something. She never created trouble, never disturbed anything. Everything she did was careful, thoughtful, and kind. One peaceful afternoon, while Evan sat on the floor writing notes, Lyra walked to him and placed her paw gently on the notebook. When he looked up, she stared into his eyes with her soft blue gaze. Something inside him shifted, like a quiet understanding blooming between them. He didn't know what it meant, not yet, but he knew their connection was becoming deeper than simple trust. Lyra was not just an unusual creature. She was something rare, something incredibly intelligent, something from a world far beyond his own. And somehow, she had chosen him. He didn't know what the future would bring, or how much his life would change because of her. But one thing was certain, their story was only beginning. Evan woke early one morning with a sense that something felt different. It wasn't the kind of feeling that warned of danger, it was more like a quiet shift in the air, a gentle change he couldn't explain. When he walked down the hallway of the rescue center toward the room where Lyra usually rested, he noticed the door was slightly open. He always closed it at night. His heartbeat quickened a little, not from fear but from confusion. He pushed the door open softly and looked inside. The blanket was empty. "Lyra," he called gently. There was no answer. The room felt still, quiet, almost too quiet. The soft glow that usually came from her fur was missing. Evan looked around carefully, hoping she had just moved to a different corner. But she wasn't there. He took a slow breath, reminding himself that Lyra was strong and intelligent. She wasn't helpless. If she had gone somewhere, it was probably because she needed to. Still, he couldn't help feeling a little ache in his chest. Over the past days, Lyra had become a part of his life in a way he had never expected. He had grown used to her presence, her calm energy, her soft humming sounds, and the quiet comfort she brought. The thought that she might be gone left him feeling strangely empty. Evan checked the rest of the rescue center, opening doors carefully and calling her name in a soft voice each time. But Lyra wasn't anywhere inside. He stepped outside, scanning the area around the building. The morning air was cool, and the sky was just beginning to brighten with early sunlight. He walked toward the forest, following a path Lyra had explored a few times with him. He hoped she had simply gone out for a walk. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and small patches of light filtered through the leaves. But even as he searched carefully, he found no sign of her. "Where did you go?" he whispered, more to the air than to anyone. Hours passed. Evan checked the rescue center again. Still nothing. He spent the rest of the day trying to stay calm, reminding himself that Lyra was special far beyond anything he had ever known. She could sense emotions, move objects, glow with her own light, and communicate feelings without speaking. Someone like her wouldn't disappear without a reason, but not knowing made his chest feel tight as evening arrived. Evan sat near the front door of the rescue center watching the forest. The sky darkened, slowly, turning from orange to pink to deep blue. Stars began to appear. Lyra's name circled through his thoughts again and again. And then, just when the moon rose, Evan saw something move between the trees. At first, it was only a soft glow, like mist shining in the dark. Then it grew brighter, taking shape as it came closer. Evan stood slowly, his heart lifting with hope. Lyra stepped out of the trees, her silver fur shimmering like quiet starlight. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were three small beings that looked somewhat like her soft fur. Gentle light, bright eyes, but much smaller, about the size of puppies. They walked close to her, staying near her legs as if they felt safest beside her. Evan stared, unable to speak. His mind tried to understand what he was seeing, but the moment was too extraordinary, too surprising, too unreal, and yet somehow peaceful. Lyra approached him slowly, her eyes soft. When she reached him, she brushed her head gently against his arm, like she always did when she wanted to comfort or reassure him. Evan pressed a hand against her shoulder, relieved and overwhelmed all at once. "Lyra," he whispered, "you came back." She hummed a soft melody, warm and calming. The three small creatures stepped slightly forward, studying Evan with wide, glowing eyes. They didn't look afraid. They seemed curious, almost familiar. "Are they?" Evan asked softly, as if the forest was listening. Lyra lifted her head and looked directly into his eyes. In that moment, Evan felt something inside his mind, a gentle warmth spreading quietly, like a soft voice without sound. A wave of emotion washed through him. Gratitude, affection, and something he didn't have a word for. And then the understanding came. Not in words, but in a feeling so clear it was impossible to misunderstand. These small beings were her offspring. Evan blinked in shock. He took a step back, steadying himself. He hadn't expected something like this, not in any possible way. Lyra had been gone for only a single day, maybe less. Yet she had returned with three living, glowing, intelligent young ones. His thoughts spun, trying to understand. Lyra watched him closely, her eyes filled with patient kindness. She placed her paw gently against his hand. The warmth inside his mind grew stronger for a moment. Another feeling passed through him, an explanation. Quiet but clear. Lyra showed him images, not sharp or detailed, but soft like memories painted with light. He saw her species traveling through the stars. He felt the sense of their connection, their way of sharing thoughts and feelings. He saw flashes of something older, something like a tradition or natural process. Then he felt something that made him freeze. The young ones carried traces of him, of his care, his kindness, his presence. Not in a biological way humans understood, but through something deeper, something unique to her species. When he had saved Lyra, when he had helped her heal, something within her had responded. His presence had acted as a catalyst, a spark that began a new life cycle. Not through any physical act, but through a form of emotional imprinting her species used to continue their kind. In her world. That meant he was considered their father. Evan didn't know what to think. He sat slowly on the soft grass, trying to take in everything he felt, and everything she was silently showing him. It wasn't frightening, just incredibly unusual, something beyond Earth. Beyond anything humans understood. The three young ones moved closer, gathering around him. One of them nudged his shoe gently, its glowing eyes full of curiosity. Another one touched his knee with its tiny paw. Evan felt a rush of warmth from them, like small sparks of trust. "Are you sure?" he whispered, barely louder than a breath. Lyra hummed again, a sound filled with calm certainty. She lowered her head and rested it against his shoulder, as if to say yes with her entire being. Evan didn't know how to react. He felt amazed, confused, touched, overwhelmed. It was so much to understand, yet none of it felt threatening or strange in a bad way. The little ones gazed up at him with innocent eyes, and he felt something gentle forming in his chest, something like protectiveness. He looked at Lyra. She watched him with an expression so soft and steady that he finally understood the truth. She trusted him not just with her own safety, but with her offspring. To her species, that trust meant something deep, something important. Evan lifted one hand slowly and let one of the young ones touch it with a tiny paw. Its glow brightened slightly, and Evan felt a small pulse of warmth through his fingers. "I don't know how to be a father," Evan whispered, almost to himself. "Especially not to beings like you." Lyra touched her forehead gently to his. A warm calm filled his thoughts again. She wasn't asking him to know everything. She was asking him to stay, to care, to be part of their lives. Evan took a long, steady breath. He didn't know what the world would say about this. He didn't know how anyone else would react. But in this moment, sitting beneath the soft glow of the moon with Lyra and the three small beings around him, he felt something he had never felt before, like he was part of something bigger than himself. Something new, something important. He didn't understand everything yet, but he knew one thing: he was not alone anymore. The days that followed were some of the most unusual and heartwarming days of Evan's life. Every morning, when he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was a soft silver glow somewhere near him, sometimes Lyra. Sometimes one of the little ones curled up close to his shoes or resting beside his chair. They had quickly grown attached to him, and he found himself smiling more often than he had in years. The little ones learned fast. Each day they became more curious, more active, and even more expressive. They made small musical hums like Lyra, each hum showing a different emotion. One hum meant they wanted to explore, another meant they wanted comfort, and a softer one meant they simply wanted to sit near him. Evan gave them temporary names: Star, Luna, and Halo, until he understood if Lyra had names for them in her own way. Each of them had their own tiny personality. Star was the boldest, walking ahead of the others during their little explorations around the rescue center. Luna was gentle and calm, always watching everything as if trying to learn the world in silence. Halo liked staying close to Evan, almost like a shadow that followed him around and occasionally nudged his arm for attention. Evan tried to keep everything quiet, but it was hard. The rescue center wasn't far from town, and there were workers, visitors, and people passing by from time to time. Although Lyra and the young ones behaved carefully, their glowing fur and unusual hums were hard to hide completely. It started small. One evening, a delivery driver glanced through a window and saw a soft blue glow in the hallway. He frowned, confused, but didn't say anything. Another day, a volunteer heard a musical sound that didn't match any animal she knew. When she asked Evan about it, he simply said he was playing some calming audio for the animals. He hated lying, but he didn't know what else to do. The world wasn't ready for beings like Lyra and her children. He wasn't even sure he was fully ready. Everything that had happened was incredible and beautiful, but it was also fragile, something that could easily be misunderstood. Lyra sensed his worry. Every time his thoughts became heavy, she would gently touch his arm or forehead, filling his mind with a soft calm that reminded him he wasn't alone in this. The little ones followed her example, offering tiny humming sounds whenever they sensed he needed comfort. Evan found it amazing how deeply connected they all were. But even with all that comfort, the outside world could not be avoided forever. One morning, when Evan stepped outside to take out the trash, he noticed a woman standing near the forest edge, holding her phone up as if recording something. Her eyes were wide, not in fear but in pure curiosity. Evan followed her gaze. Near the trees, Star was playing with a small ball of light. He had created something he seemed to do naturally, as easily as a human child might play with a soap bubble. The light floated in the air, shifting gently like a small glowing bubble, and Star chased it happily while Luna and Halo watched. The woman gasped softly. Evan hurried forward, gently calling, "Star, come here." Star paused, looked at Evan, and immediately bounded over to him with soft, glowing steps. Luna and Halo followed. Lyra appeared shortly afterward, stepping out from behind a tree. Her calm silver glow was impossible to miss. The woman lowered her phone, her mouth slightly open, unsure what she was seeing. Evan could tell this was not fear. It was wonder. But wonder could still become a problem if people shared videos without understanding. "Please," Evan said softly, "don't be scared. They're gentle." The woman kept her voice low. "What are they?" Evan hesitated. He had no simple answer. But before he could speak, Lyra stepped closer. She made a soft, peaceful hum, and the woman seemed to relax immediately. Her shoulders dropped, and her eyes softened. "They're safe," Evan said quietly. The woman nodded slowly, still stunned. "I won't share the video," she said, almost whispering. "But people will notice. That light, that sound, it doesn't look like anything on Earth." She left after a moment, still looking back as she walked away. Evan knew the moment she disappeared into the distance that things had changed. The world's attention was coming, whether he wanted it or not. Within a few days, more people showed up near the rescue center. Locals at first, then strangers who claimed they wanted to see the forest lights. Someone said they saw glowing footprints near the trees. Someone else claimed they heard an angelic sound at night. Rumors grew quickly, and rumors always brought more people. Evan tried to keep Lyra and the young ones hidden inside as much as possible. The little ones didn't fully understand why things had changed, but they sensed his worry and stayed close to him, humming softly whenever he seemed stressed. One afternoon, while Evan was feeding the other animals, Lyra gently touched his shoulder. When he turned, she looked into his eyes with a seriousness he hadn't seen in her before. He felt another warm wave of emotions enter his thoughts: caution, uncertainty, and something that felt like a gentle warning. "You think people will come here?" Evan whispered. Understanding her message without words, her soft hum carried the answer. "Yes," he sighed. "I don't want them to take you away. I don't want anyone to misunderstand you." Lyra pressed her forehead lightly against his chest, sending calmness through him, but calmness could not stop what happened next. One morning, Evan arrived at the rescue center to find several official vehicles parked outside. A group of people stood in front, some wearing badges, others holding cameras, and a few dressed like researchers or scientists. His stomach sank. Someone must have shared something or sent a report. A tall man stepped forward. "Are you Evan Roy?" he asked politely. Evan nodded slowly. "We've received multiple claims about unusual animal activity here. We'd like to take a look around." Evan felt the little ones behind the door, sensing his uneasiness. Lyra was with them, her soft glow barely visible through a small crack. "I take care of the animals here," Evan said carefully. "They're all safe. Nothing unusual." The man smiled kindly. "We're not here to accuse you of anything. We just want to ensure everyone is safe and healthy." But Evan could see it in their eyes, the curiosity, the hunger for answers, the deep interest in anything mysterious. They weren't bad people, but they represented something larger, something that could separate him from Lyra. Lyra must have sensed his rising worry, because suddenly the soft glow behind the door dimmed completely, like moonlight hiding behind clouds. Evan realized she was trying to hide herself and the young ones to protect them. The officials and researchers looked around for a while, but they found nothing unusual. Eventually they left politely, saying they'd return later if needed. But Evan's heart remained heavy. Their visit was only the beginning. That evening, Evan sat beside Lyra as the little ones curled around his legs. He stroked her smooth fur gently, wondering how much longer he could keep them safe from the world's curiosity. Lyra made a gentle hum, her eyes calm. She sent another wave of emotion into his thoughts: trust, gratitude, comfort, and something else. Something he couldn't fully understand yet. "What are you trying to say?" he whispered. Lyra lifted her head and looked toward the forest, as if pointing without moving. A soft understanding settled in Evan's chest. She wanted him to choose, to protect them, to stay with them, or to let the world take them away. Evan swallowed, feeling the weight of a decision he never expected to face. He looked at the little ones, their small glowing bodies warm against him. They gazed up at him with innocent eyes filled with trust. He knew he couldn't let them be taken. He couldn't let fear, curiosity, or misunderstanding separate them. He gently placed his hand on Lyra's head. "I'm with you," he said softly. "No matter what." Lyra closed her eyes, her soft glow warming the entire room like a quiet promise. The little ones snuggled closer to him, humming their tiny melodies. Outside, the world was beginning to ask questions. But inside, in that small glowing room, a new kind of family sat together, uncertain of the future, yet connected in a way nothing could break. Evan stood near the quiet launch site, feeling the cool night air against his face. The sky above him shimmered with stars, each one reminding him of places far beyond his understanding. Lyra stood beside him with her 3 little ones, all glowing softly like small moons. They watched him with bright, trusting eyes, and Evan felt a strange warmth in his heart every time he looked at them. He had never imagined that he would one day stand like this, preparing to leave everything he had known behind. The launch site was hidden deep in a peaceful valley that only a few researchers knew about. It was not used often, and most of the equipment looked old, but it was perfect for keeping secrets safe. A gentle wind moved through the tall grass, making the place feel even more dreamlike. Evan felt as if he had stepped out of his own life and into a story someone else had written. Lyra moved closer to him. Even though she looked like a canine, her eyes held a deep intelligence and a calm strength. Her voice inside his mind felt warm and soft. She told him that the ship was ready. The small craft, shaped like a smooth silver seed, rested quietly on a platform made of metal. It didn't hum or shake the way human machines did. It simply felt alive, as if it knew its purpose and was waiting patiently. Evan turned around slowly, taking in every detail of the valley one last time. He knew that leaving Earth was not just a physical step. It meant leaving behind his work, his friends, his usual routines, and every familiar sound he had grown used to since childhood. There was a gentle ache in his chest, but strangely, he did not feel fear. He only felt a deep responsibility, like something inside him had already accepted the path ahead. The 3 small alien pups ran playfully around him. They were quick and graceful, their tiny paws barely touching the ground. When they laughed, if it could be called laughter, echoed in his mind like tiny bells. Each pup had a slightly different glow. One was pale gold, one a soft blue, and the smallest had a rosy pink shine that seemed to brighten whenever it was excited. They treated Evan like family, climbing onto him, sitting beside him, and always watching to see how he reacted to their new discoveries. Evan knelt down and touched the smallest pup gently. Its skin felt smooth and warm, not like fur, but like something between light and living tissue. It pressed its glowing head against his hand, sending him a small wave of emotion that felt like pure joy. Evan smiled without thinking. He realized that these little ones saw him differently than anyone else. To them, he was not just a human. He was someone who had protected their mother, someone who had once been a stranger but became a guide and a comfort. Lyra spoke again in his mind, telling him that her world was far safer for the pups than Earth could ever be at this time. Too many humans were still unsure, still afraid, still confused about her species. She understood their feelings, but she also knew that her children needed a place where they could grow peacefully. She told Evan that if he chose to come with them, he would never be alone. Her people would welcome him. Evan stood up slowly and looked at the craft again. He wondered what her world looked like. Was it covered in forests like Earth? Did it have mountains, oceans, or cities? He imagined skies filled with strange lights, and creatures that moved with grace and quiet intelligence. He imagined new discoveries waiting for him, things that no human had ever seen. But he also imagined something else, a life where he could help the pups learn, teach them about kindness, guide them as they grew. He imagined walking through an alien landscape with Lyra by his side, both of them watching over the young ones. The vision felt peaceful and full of promise. The researchers who had helped repair the ship stood at a distance. They respected his space and said very little. They had done their part and now watched with quiet support. They knew that Evan's decision was his alone. Some of them even smiled at him, as if they understood the weight of the moment. They had seen how the pups reacted to him, how their tiny glowing forms surrounded him like he belonged with them. When the time came to board the ship, the pups ran ahead happily, their lights dancing across the metal surface. They entered through a smooth opening that closed behind them like a gentle wave of silver light. Lyra walked up the ramp last, then turned to look at Evan. Her eyes carried a soft, patient glow. She was giving him a choice, not a command. Evan took a deep breath. He felt the cool air fill his chest. He remembered the nights he had spent worrying about the pup's safety, the days when people questioned his intentions, and the strange bond that had grown between him and this family that wasn't even from his world. He realized that everything had led to this moment. The decision was no longer confusing. It felt natural. He stepped forward. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if the weight of fear had been lifted from him. When he reached the door of the craft, he placed his hand on its smooth surface. It warmed under his touch, almost like a greeting. Lyra moved beside him, her presence calming and steady. He knew then that he had made the right choice. The door opened again, and warm light spilled out. Inside, the space looked strange but welcoming. Soft walls glowed with gentle colors, and the air felt fresh and clean. The pups ran to him as soon as he stepped inside, jumping around him and filling his mind with cheerful thoughts. He laughed, feeling a joy he had not felt in years. The door closed behind him quietly. There was no loud noise, no shaking. The ship lifted gently, like a leaf rising on a silent breeze. Through a small window, Evan watched the valley grow smaller. The grass swayed one last time. The trees seemed to wave, and the sky slowly changed from deep blue to bright silver. Evan didn't feel sadness anymore. Instead, he felt a strange sense of beginning, as if the story of his life was opening into a larger chapter. Lyra settled beside him, and the pups curled up around his legs. He placed a hand on each of them, feeling their soft warmth. Lyra shared a gentle message in his mind, telling him that their journey would be long but full of discovery. She told him that the pups would grow learning from both of them, from two worlds, and that this would give them a deeper understanding of life than her people had ever known. Evan looked out at the stars. As the ship moved silently among them, the glowing points of light no longer felt distant or unreachable. They felt like part of the path he was meant to follow. He realized that he was not leaving Earth behind. He was carrying its kindness, its lessons, and its hope with him. He was not losing a home, he was gaining another one, and so Evan, the quiet wildlife volunteer who once rescued a strange creature in the woods, became something more than a caretaker or a friend. He became a guide, a symbol of trust between two worlds, and a father to beings whose future might one day change the universe. With Lyra and the pups beside him, he stepped into a life filled with wonder, peace, and endless possibility.